concussion in sports is a big concern at the moment. Everybody's talking about it. It's always in the news. It's always in the headlines, and we're seeing some very high-profile cases on TV and in the papers. I'm Professor Tony Bailey. I'm a professor of trauma and neurosurgery at the University of Birmingham and the Queen Elizabeth Hospital, Birmingham. And my main research interest is head injury, and primarily head injury in sport. What's exciting is a piece of research that's just come out of the University of Birmingham in collaboration with the Rugby Football Union. What we've actually done is to study elite rugby players in the Premiership and the Championship in England over a course of 2 seasons. And what we did was actually to collect saliva, believe it or not, from rugby players during the head injury assessment that were part of the normal medical procedure. So over 2 seasons, we collect some samples of salivas from most incidents that happen in those competitions. And we were looking for an objective way to diagnose concussion. Now, this sounds straightforward. Everybody can spot a concussion when someone is lying on the pitch, motionless, but actually, the majority of concussions don't really present like that. It's a very subtle event. So, it's just a brief period of disorientation or stumbling or just, not being quite right, and could be missed, particularly if the doctor is sitting, 40, 50 meters away from where the action is taking place. And then you go and see the player, and actually often the signs of concussion may have disappeared already, except the concussion has already done the damage. And if the player returns to play too soon and the concussion hasn't recovered and they get injured again, those effects can be sometimes very, very severe, if not catastrophic. And this is a situation that everybody wants to avoid. So everybody's looking for a better way of looking after the players and diagnosing concussion. So here we have a study that actually looks at saliva. And what we found is saliva can actually help identify concussion in nearly 100% of the cases. It's actually very, very accurate. So this is a breakthrough because as I say, it's something that is not invasive. It's easy to collect, and it gives you accurate results virtually every time. So how this can be used is that if you imagine in an elite sports situation, the doctors, the physiotherapists will want to have an objective tool to corroborate their clinical diagnosis. But perhaps even more importantly, in community sports, there is no medical help. It's often in the hands of the parents or a coach, or clearly no one. So I think what you want there is that it's something that can really create effectively an opportunity for people to have something that is equivalent to a professional assessment. With video replays, what happens in the elite rugby, for example, with video replays and professional doctors, professional physios, and when you have a test effectively that can give you the same level of accuracy as that, and then now it's going to be available effectively potentially for millions of youth players or older players, and that can really, as I say, transform the way we recognize and manage concussion, and hopefully this will help prevent some of the incidents, some of the perhaps the horrific incidents that we've seen recently, or where players, as I say, unfortunately carry the effects of the concussions and may have suffered in sort of some deleterious effects that could have been avoided. So we think this is exciting, and hopefully this will make positive impacts on the sport for a number of people.